Hey everybody, Daniel from Spacedock here. Now, I hate to jump on the anti-Last Jedi bandwagon, as I do quite enjoy parts of that film, but I was rewatching the Battle of Dakar sequence, and frankly, there are just so many bizarre decisions made on both sides in that battle that I can't understand the logic or position of any character making the choices in that situation. And I want to explain something that I didn't even clock onto the first time because of how fast everything goes, but doesn't seem to make any sense on a closer analysis. So to help with the context here, I'm going to refer to some expanded universe sources as well. And to start off, from the Battlefront 2 Resurrection DLC, we know that not only does the Resistance know that this First Order fleet is coming, they know that they have a dreadnought, and they also have technical readouts for that dreadnought provided by Zay Versio and Shriv, which is how they know the weak spot to drop their bombs on in the film. So with this intel in hand, and knowing that the dreadnought is on its way, they summon Vice Admiral Holdo and the Ninka back to Dakar from another system. We know from the book Bomber Command that they were in another system with the Ninka and their Star Fortress bombers. It's worth pointing out that calling back other fleets from other systems to the one system that has been compromised and revealed to the First Order is basically just condemning those fleets to be hunted forever. You'd think they'd want to hide them somewhere, but I guess they thought this situation was so important that it was worth revealing the location and existence of these bombers and the Ninka to the First Order. So they call this fleet back, and by the time The Last Jedi starts, these bombers have been arranged a long distance from the Radus in a tight formation with a launched fighter escort. There's obviously a plan in place to destroy this dreadnought, but they can't destroy it until they've destroyed all of the point defense guns, which would easily take down the bombers. So to that end, they have sent Poe Dameron on his own to destroy all of these point defense guns. Now, the First Order come out of hyperspace, and they're no cleverer than the Resistance in this battle, I'm afraid. Captain Kennedy, at least, does a fairly decent impression of a person who knows what he's talking about, and he's quite convincing at some parts. I do like his thinly veiled contempt for the clownish General Hux, but the very first thing he does in this battle is bemoan the lack of launched fighters from his own ship, which presumably is his fault because he didn't launch them, and then fire his slow-charging autocannons at the Resistance base on the planet's surface, which is now a couple of hills with some bunkers on with nobody in them. So he achieves nothing there apart from to discharge his guns for the entire battle and then slowly recharge them before he can fire at the Radus. Meanwhile, Poe Dameron successfully destroys all of these point defense guns, and then he gets Leia, whose plan this must have been, on the radio and says, "Okay, General, I've blown up all the defense guns." And she says, "Okay, Poe, land everybody and let's get out of here." As if to imply that the point defense guns were somehow stopping them from leaving. They could have left 20 minutes ago if they wanted to. And Poe quite rightfully says, hang on a second, are we not going to carry out our complicated and long-time planned operation using the intel that we gathered and the bombers that we carefully deployed to destroy this dreadnought? Is that not why I just destroyed 25 defense guns at great risk to my own life? And Leia sighs profusely, and then later in the film demotes Poe for needlessly risking life and limb by carrying out her plan, or the second half of her plan that he'd already prepared for by destroying the defense guns. And then of course all of the Star Fortress bombers get destroyed because they're so fragile that frankly it didn't really matter whether the point defense guns were gone or not. The only time the First Order can't effortlessly destroy them is when there's only one left and it needs to blow the ship up for the film to continue. It's also worth pointing out that Poe radios the damaged bomber and says, "Hello, Paige, are you there? Can you please drop the bombs?" Apparently he read the script and he knows that he needs to call this gun turret because everybody else on the ship is dead. But then all of these Resistance forces get destroyed. They take out the dreadnought. There's a particular line where Poe is saying, "But this is our chance to take out a dreadnought," as if destroying one of the thousands of ships that the First Order have in the face of the 5 ships the Resistance have would make any difference on a strategic scale. But the fact is, the decision to try and destroy this dreadnought rather than just running away wasn't Poe's decision. It was presumably Leia's decision because she gathered intelligence, called back bombers, set up a plan, positioned everything, ordered Poe to go and blow the gun turrets up. The plan was 60% complete before she decided that they were just going to go, and yet for the rest of the film, Poe is personally blamed and demoted for this entire operation as if he was the mastermind behind it all. all. Now, that's not to say that a character arc in which the reckless Poe Dameron learns how to be a more reasoned and conservative officer with his troops would not be entertaining. It certainly could be. In fact, I think that's a great premise for a subplot. But if they wanted that to happen, they should have made it obvious that these bombers weren't supposed to be attacking the dreadnought, and Poe convinced them to go with him and do it, in violation of orders from higher up, and then got a load of people killed and a lot of resources lost. As the film portrays it, this plan was clearly laid out way ahead of time. Otherwise, they would never have risked the bombers in the first place, they would never have called them back from the other system and compromised them, and they would never have sent Poe to disable the gun turrets, who were only a threat to the bombers. As portrayed in the film, there is no reason at all why, if Leia wanted to leave, she couldn't have just jumped the entire fleet to hyperspace as soon as that last evacuation transport landed. All Resistance strike craft have hyperdrives as well. She didn't even need to land them if she didn't want to, and frankly, if she hadn't landed them, then there would have been an active air patrol after they came out of hyperspace, and they wouldn't have immediately had their hangar deck blown up and lost all of their fighters. Now, I'm getting nitpicky here. I mean, the whole thing is, really. And I don't want to bemoan this film anymore because it's been so viciously torn to pieces by so many people, half of whom make extremely ignorant arguments that should not be taken seriously. But anyone poking holes in the tactical decisions from this particular battle is, I'm afraid, completely right. And while this battle is visually impressive with some really awesome starfighter maneuvers from Poe and some great VFX overall, it could very, very easily have been rewritten to actually cast Poe as this reckless commander who gets people killed, rather than as a guy who is quite reasonably questioning why his general has seemingly forgotten their carefully prepared plan halfway through. Now, I was going to end the video there, but I wasn't quite happy with the sort of negative tone overall, so I want to finish it off now by suggesting some ways that you could fix this to kick off Poe's character arc in a more believable way that makes a lot more sense. Now, first of all, you could simply have these bombers be part of the Resistance formation near the Radius, ready to leave when the hyperdrive is ready or when the final evacuation transports have landed, and Poe personally radios them and gets them all to go and follow him because he wants to take out the dreadnought, with some loud objections from Leia, who eventually gives up when she sees that the ill-disciplined bomber captains are going off on this mission because they want to stick it to the First Order. Then you could have everybody get killed and Poe survive, and then he has to learn his lesson. An even more convincing alternative would be to have it so one of the Resistance's ships, maybe the Vigil or something, is disabled and needs a couple of minutes to recharge its hyperdrive or repair its hyperdrive or get away from an interdictor or get out of a debris field or something. And Leia is saying, no, we have to leave these people behind because if we stay, we risk losing more people. We've got to leave them behind. And Poe refuses to leave anyone behind because he puts his heart in front of his head. He's thinking emotionally rather than logically, and he takes all of these bombers back and loses them all trying to save this Resistance ship that was doomed and everybody knew it was doomed. Then you can reasonably demote him because he made the situation worse by trying to do what he believed to be the right thing, which still makes him an endearing character, albeit one who has a lot to learn. If you still want to start the film with the sequence of Poe taking out gun turrets on the ship, or in some way attacking the dreadnought while BB-8 does his whole repair shtick and you have all that stuff with hooks, you can keep most of that script intact, but instead have it so that Poe is trying to disable the autocannons on the dreadnought, rather than the point defense guns, because maybe the Resistance fleet and the Radius can't get away before the autocannons can fire, and if they are allowed to fire, they'll destroy the Radius. But the Resistance fleet would still need to flee even after he destroyed that gun, simply because the First Order have such great numbers. So you can still start the film in the same way, still have all of the surface skimming and the fancy maneuvers and the BB-8 stuff, but instead of disabling the gun turrets, he just disables the autocannon and then runs back to the fleet and makes his mistake where he takes the bombers off on this ill-fated operation. This version has the added benefit of making it so the First Order have already launched their fighters and specifically aim to destroy the fleeing Radius on which the Resistance can actually escape, rather than the empty base on the planet. This gives the First Order an actual structured plan that makes sense in the same way the Resistance now do. And this is incredibly important because you should never ever trivialize the villains in this story. And sadly, The Last Jedi is very guilty of that, particularly with General Hux, who somehow lost all of his faculties between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and turned into this sort of joke character. But these kind of clear stakes and parameters and adversities to be overcome and competent villains to defeat are what made battles like the Battle of Hoth and the Battle of Endor more structured and understandable, made it more satisfying when the heroes were victorious. And in this case in particular, it informs the planned character arc for Poe perfectly if you send him off and get these people killed, and it is more definitively his fault and less confusing for the viewer. But that's just my take on the matter. I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments below, and I do apologise for jumping into this rather toxic sphere of debate for The Last Jedi. There are parts of that film that I really really do enjoy. But ships and battle tactics are an important part of the Spacedock content plan, and I really felt like this deserved pointing out. So please let me know what you think, and thank you all for watching. This is Daniel from Spacedock, signing off. Thank you for watching Spacedock. Please remember to like, subscribe and share for more science fiction spacecraft summaries. If you enjoy the channel, why not consider pledging your support on Patreon? For just $1 a month, you'll be able to access the Spacedock schedule to see what's coming up.